Welcome to the Everyday Millionaire Show with Ryan Greenberg and Nick Kalfas. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Everyday Millionaire Show. We are here with Ginger Faith. How you doing, Ginger?
Doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Absolutely. I'm Ryan. This is Nick, by the way. I don't think we even said that to Kevin, so he probably didn't know who was who. But this is Nick, and I'm Ryan. So thanks for coming on. Where are you coming from?
San Francisco Bay Area, Silicon Valley.
Oh, goodness. It's expensive. We talk about real estate today.
It is expensive here. Yes.
Awesome. So what just we kind of read through your bio and stuff. So when did you get started in real estate and how did that, how did it start?
It started with a book, two books actually. One of them was Tony Robbins' Unlimited Power. And basically, Tony Robbins told me back in 1991 that I could do anything if I put my mind to it and had the right attitude. And for some reason, I believed him. And then the second book was Nothing Down by Robert Allen, which was a really big book back in the 80s and 90s. And he was like one of the original gurus in teaching people how to invest in real estate. So I read it, and he had a proposition. He said, if you buy one rental per year for 10 years, then you start systematically paying off the mortgages, you'll retire. That'll be a retirement plan. And so I said, well, that's great. What if I buy a six-family house? Would that accelerate it? And that's what I did. And I was really young and more stupid, more brawn than brains, more guts than brains. But that's okay. That's how I started.
How old were you when you started buying real estate?
In my early 20s, like 23.
So Nick and I were both in our mid 20s, I'll say, when we started buying real estate. And a lot of people asked us, a lot of people still ask us, how did you get started? How did you get the money to buy it? And we're buying a lot cheaper real estate than you're buying, I'm sure, in San Francisco. So how did you get enough money to start purchasing real estate? Did you borrow it? Did you inherit it? How did that happen?
Well, didn't borrow it and didn't, well, I got a bank loan, of course, right? So, but I had to have the down payment. And so I actually started a business. And it was like in 1992, I started the business. And I had a goal. I wanted a full-time income on a part-time job because I was volunteering for my church full-time. And so I wanted to do that. So I ended up getting this business where I worked 20 hours a week and I made over six figures back in 1992, which really was a lot of money back then. And it
Right.
was super fun. It was an awesome business, and it was fantastic. And so I started getting all this money, and I didn't know what to do with it. And
It's a
you can
good
only buy so
problem.
many pairs of shoes. You can only buy so many pairs of shoes, right?
Yeah.
So I kept my expenses low, and then I just got the money down. I just kept saving, saving, saving until I got the money down for it was a distressed Victorian house, 7,000 square foot, six units. But this was back before YouTube, before Bigger Pockets. This was like nobody was doing this, and definitely not anybody that I knew. So today it's a little bit more chic. You've got all these TV shows, right? Back then you had nothing. No, like nobody was doing this. So it was really, really odd. Everybody thought it was really strange for doing this, but that's how I got started. I just worked. And I do recommend that anybody starts a small business and start an intelligent small business or buy a business that might be in distress and somebody wants to get rid of it. I'm a big believer in the two-pronged strategy: income from business, income from investments. I think that's, if you can just nail that down, you got it.
So, what are you focusing on now? We read your bio and you said that you're a real estate investor and you're also a broker as well.
Right, right. So my day job is I'm a broker, and right now I have this. I feel like I just won the lottery because I got a buyer to actually get an accepted offer in a super hot area of Silicon Valley. We got beat out five times, and I did an amazing video on how to win the bidding war. So I felt like a total
What are the
dud.
average purchase prices in the areas that you're selling homes in?
Mm, 1.4 to 2.5,
Okay.
probably. Like, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I
And what
mean, so it depends on which direction you go, right? So if you go where I'm at, you go towards Facebook, it goes up with every mile. If you go towards Sacramento in the other direction, which is an hour and a half away from me, you can still get something for under $1 million that's decent, so yeah.
And what are and things are changing right now. So we're seeing, I own a real estate brokerage as well here and a title company and a couple other businesses, property management and a building company. But the the brokerage now, we're going through a lot of kind of changes and with the whole, NAR thing. What
Mhm.
are people starting to do? Are they changing commissions out there, or what are your typical commissions that you're getting on both the buy and the sell side right now? And how do you see that changing with the
Honestly, so
settlement?
I have a really strong opinion about what happened. If you dig into that NAR lawsuit, basically it was a very greedy, hungry lawyer who was an ambulance chaser who decided he could win big by sabotaging something that was not even a problem. The biggest issue is that buyers are at a deficit in Silicon Valley. They're already having a hard time. Who can come up with $300,000, $400,000 for a down payment, right? And so they're already challenged. So on top of that, and on top of closing costs, now we're saying, oh, the seller's not going to pay. The seller, who's got a ton of equity, is not going to pay for the buyer's fee, agent's fee. And it's pretty ridiculous. So what's really happening in real life is everything's open to negotiation. Everybody wants to make it work. Okay, so you got a seller, they want to sell their house. You got a buyer, they want to buy the house. You have the agents, they want their commission. Let's talk.
Yeah.
And so right now what we're having is we're just giving a ton more paperwork, and so we have to have a buyer's agent agreement, which we should have all had to begin with anyway, because it's kind of ridiculous that you would, these agents who go out and they show open houses. I mean, they go with buyers to open houses and show them houses and they don't have an agreement. That's kind of insane anyway. That's just, you have to have an agreement before you start wasting your time. So that's required now, and it never was required, which is kind of crazy. And then other than that, there's certain paperwork that the California Association of Realtors is having us add on to our documentation, where basically it's going to be the same thing. We can negotiate, anybody can negotiate, the seller can negotiate, but it's like, you want the buyer or not? The buyer has X amount of dollars, you're getting a ton of equity. Let's make it work. So ultimately, that was much ado about nothing. That was about lining the pockets of a greedy lawyer. Basically, he just he just said it. He staged a bunch of mock trials, one after another, until he got the jury to feel emotionally like, oh my God, these brokers are terrible. These agents are terrible. The average pay for a real estate agent in the country is less than $50,000 a year. In the Silicon Valley, it's $84,000 a year. So to say that we're being greedy for just, all of the work that we do is kind of insane.
But I do think
Yeah,
that, and maybe it's different in California, but here we have so many agents that are basically doing nothing, or they're part-time agents, or they sell one house a year or something like that. So that's kind of, I feel like, skewing the numbers a little bit, because like all the killer agents that we know and work with are selling, 20 plus $1 million a year. They're doing just fine. But
yeah,
then
yeah,
the bottom 90% of agents, because there's like thousands and thousands of agents here, they're
yeah,
not, but most of them probably have another job anyway, and they're not really focusing on real estate. Like we
yeah,
have part-time agents that work for our brokerage that are also just mortgage brokers that got their real estate license because they wanted to have kind of that both thing, but they're not out there really, selling $20 million worth of real estate. Um,
yeah,
so I feel like what's my opinion a little bit is that it's going to wean out some of those people that are like just a buyer's agent for one or two people a year. And hopefully, what I thought would be a positive thing is more in-house transactions. So the buyer and seller coming, just like a dual agency type of situation where it's under our listing, the buyer can go on Zillow, anybody can go on Zillow and find a house, and then they come directly to the listing agent And instead of the seller having to pay 6%, they can pay the listing agent 3.5% to just handle both sides of that transaction. Is
That
that
can work. That can work. The reason why buyers agencies came up in the 90s to begin with were that they were underrepresented and underprotected. And oftentimes these huge investment and sellers were taking advantage of them and their ignorance. So if it can be transactional, that I understand what you're saying. I don't think it's a bad idea. I've done dual agency from time to time. I have no issues with it. It's really just a matter of are both parties being protected? And then that's where it can get dicey because not everybody is like you or I, where you're very you walk the line of being fair to both parties, right? Not everybody is that way. So
Yeah, I guess that was the way I was thinking of it too. And I don't know how the closings work with you guys out in California, but like we have a title company where there's a title attorney. So they're the ones that really are, going to be seeing that law and making sure that both parties have a fair shake in the deal. Do you guys use title? That's how you guys close deals with title companies
yeah,
or
we don't use attorneys with residential. We use attorneys with commercial, but we don't use it with residential at all in California, unless something
Hmm.
weird comes up and we need an attorney.
Okay. So yeah, I guess that could I think every title company that we have here has an attorney attached to
Hmm.
those documents that's responsible for making sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed fair in
Yeah.
both directions.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be that way here too, right? And I would say that there are a lot of good agents out there who want to do right by their clients. It's not about that. It's just a matter of just trying to protect both sides. That's the reason
Right.
why the buyer's agency came up to begin with.
Right.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about the better stuff, real estate investing now. So
Okay.
are you investing in your market that you're living now, or are you investing in different areas with maybe lower price points?
Yeah. So the only thing I do in my area are luxury flips. That's the only thing that makes money around here. So we buy a lot of land in super affluent area, and then we build a luxury home, and then we sell it. So that makes sense in our area. If you're really tight with your numbers, you can do regular flips. If you're a contractor, if you got a really good team, you can do that. So that's possible. But with the increase of with costs have gone out of control, it's more difficult because even garbage properties are going for a premium around here. So it's a little bit more challenging to do that. So that's what I'm doing around here. Out of my area, I'm right now in the process of liquidating some of my rentals, my residential rentals, and I'm focusing more on commercial. So that's the direction I'm going into right now.
Can you go over like what a deal looks like for, I guess, as far as the timeline on the lots that you're buying and you're building and how much you're putting into it, how much you're paying for the lots, how much your rehab it costs, and then what your sales price is?
Well, the number one most important thing is to have a fabulous team. And you got to get people that you trust. You can bond a contractor. It's not a bad idea to bond a contractor if you're working with a contractor that you've never worked with before. But it's also important to have your own, like I have a template where I can create a scope of work. Every single detail from nuts and bolts and every little detail of flooring, refrigerators, rebar, concrete. What is everything going to cost for a project? So when you get involved with a project and you have a team that you trust are efficient and they'll work steady for you, and you need a good project manager. So to say how much, it really depends on the location. So going back to square one, right? So if you're in where we call it Atherton, which is super high end, or Hillsborough, super high end, and you find a piece of scrap property. Right now, my partner just bought a piece of land, raw land in Saratoga. The raw land was 1 acre. He's going to subdivide it two, and because he's a builder, And so subdividing into two lots, about half an acre a piece roughly. And so the number, but it was 1 acre of land for $3.2 million, and he got a bargain.
Hmm.
Jeez.
Because I was trying to negotiate with one on the same street for 3.7, and the seller was giving me a hard time.
Hmm.
So, so that one ended up selling for 3.525 cash. And I was trying to get a bank loan for that one because having two projects on at the same time was a little steep for me. So, yeah, but it's going to cost around 1.5 per building to build. And then the ARV after repair value of those particular units are going to be in the realm of 8 to 9 million a piece.
Not
Okay.
bad.
So that those numbers are good, but God, carrying costs on those must be just insane. So the timeline really is important, right? So what kind of timeline with city regulations, permitting, engineering, what kind of timeline do you guys, work with over there for a build like that?
That's a very good question, and there's two parts to that answer. The first answer to that question is you have to always, always, always be looking at an angle to save money. So, for example, we went to the seller and said, "Hey, while we're drawing up our plans and talking to the city and getting permits, would you extend the escrow for another 90 days?" And they said yes. So 3 free months, right? So we're getting all this stuff done and three free months. So that's like winning the lottery, getting 3 free months, right? But typically it's 6 months for plans, right? And then to break ground. So it's a total about 18 months to 18 to 20 months is like a normal, a normal turn for something like that. If you've got a good team and you're really on top of it.
Yeah, so what teammates do you have as part of your organization that help? Obviously you have a builder. What other parts of the puzzle do you have and recommend people look for when they're looking for a team?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, um, general contractor, structural engineer, architect. You need workers. You need subcontractors. Does the general contractor have subcontractors, or can you go negotiate to get your own subcontractors? How will the workflow be impacted if you get your own in? So you have this, the general usually will have an HVAC guy, a sprinkler guy, just, day labor. They'll have an electrician, they'll have a plumber, like all of those people. So I have them, my contractor has them, who's available, how do we coordinate, who has the better pricing, all of that. So, I mean, those are some of the important pieces of the puzzle. And of course, it's really nice to get a good relationship with the city. Always be pleasant, help them to move along your projects and cooperate with you. And so yeah, I would say that's pretty for the building part. Now, there are other aspects. I've got Airbnbs, so I've got cleaning people, I've got, redundant handymen. So if one isn't
Mhm.
available, another's available, right? So you have those people are available. So basically, you can use Thumbtack, you can use Craigslist, you can use referrals to find quality people. But I think the most important thing is to have top-notch quality with every single thing you do, every component of your business. I know you guys know that. Like, I have no tolerance for people who are not going to give it their best. It's just like they just have no tolerance for that. I used to, and it just made everything more uncomfortable and waste time and money. And so those are some of the uh, contractors that I have at the top of my head.
So, excuse me, are all the builds unique in their own way, with these more expensive houses out there, or do you kind of build pretty much the same type of style of house when building your flips?
Yeah, so they're not all the same. They have to go with the neighborhood and the topography, but they also have to go with what is in trend. Now, HGTV has really, really changed the landscape of what people like. And so basically, whatever HGTV says, we do. Because that's what people will pay the top dollar for. It's what they tell us. So whatever is fashionable right now, that's what drives the dollars up. And as a builder, you have really no room for error. You can't be putting, a Mediterranean style house in an area where, craftsmen are regular there, and then the Mediterranean style isn't really in vogue right now, right? People don't want that. So a person can build their own Mediterranean. For example, California Mediterranean is one of my favorite style homes. Absolutely gorgeous, stunning. Build that for yourself, right? Or buy an older one. But for us, we have to go with what the trends are right now.
But does the architect not only give you what the house will look like on like a piece of paper, but will they actually give you like a live visual of like what it will look like? Just because that home value is like it's such a higher price point, whereas I've never built a home personally, but I would imagine that, somewhere around where we live or around Baltimore, it's a lot easier to just have them on the piece of paper versus like selling like a multi-million dollar house. Like I would want to see that visual like live before I
Yes,
even attempt
yes,
to
you
build
can
that.
get 3D renderings. You can get a full scale walkthrough. Yeah, you can get as detailed as you want to. There, it's all available now.
And are you trying to, I imagine, pre-sell these houses before they're actually finished?
No.
No, you're not. So you're going to market
But like
after they're built.
some do. And you know who the builders that do that have a model home, and those are the big guys. So the big or medium to big, right? And I'm
Hmm.
not big. I'm not big. I'm not medium. I'm small potatoes. So I have one house, but it's fine for me, right? It's one house.
Hmm.
But if you've got a model house, then somebody can look through it and say, and then you say, okay, well, you can pick out your cabinets, you can pick out your flooring, you can pick. But what happens is when they see my house and they're going to see sticks, and they're going to they're going to be like, and they're going to be, oh, I love this purple paint, and and this, and they may not have um a good eye for what will look nice afterward, and they might not be secure enough to do that. So what ends up happening in my experience is that they end up lowballing you, because they don't see what's going to happen. And so it ends up being a complete waste. For me, it's been a complete waste of time. I've tried it because you have to try things, right?
Hmm.
But when they walk in and now it's staged, it's finished, you've got grass, it's everything is like perfect. You can eat off the floor. And now people are dropping, jaws are dropping, and they're like, writing up the checks. So that's what I want. Then that's what we really need.
Nice. So I see here that you were featured on HDTV for some of your flips. Is that right?
My houses were, I was not. My
Okay.
houses were. So one
Okay.
was a flip, and it was gorgeous, and it was dummied down by house hunters because it was too nice in comparison to the other ones they were hunting for. And my stager like freaked out because they took some of her stuff out, and they dummied it down a little bit. And but that was a beautiful flip in a gorgeous neighborhood. Right across the street from my house was like a George Washington house. It was just amazing. um, and then another one, it was a remodel for a client. It was 2 acres here in Livermore, California, which was farm country right near the city. Huge, fabulous piece of property. And she wanted me to sell it, but she wanted to get top dollar. So we renovated it first. And then in that case, it was HGTV liked the property, and the 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 buyers had a very unique story. It was right in the middle of the fires and COVID, and both of the buyers were firefighters, and so they loved the story, and they loved the house, and it was a farmhouse in an amazing area. It was absolutely stunning when we were done with it, and so the houses were featured. So I thought
How
that's pretty
much do
cool.
firefighters make out there?
You know what? I don't know. I have one of my best friends is a volunteer firefighter. And he's so proud. He's one of the smartest businessmen I know. He owns a ton of real estate and businesses, and his passion is firefighting. And he brags that he makes $7 an hour as a volunteer firefighter.
So is that are they
So
mostly volunteer? Because in my head I'm like, okay, $2 million house, even $1.4 million house for two firemen. I mean, here I would imagine they're probably making maybe low six figures. Would be pretty hard to buy a $2 million house on.
yeah,
Um,
well, that particular one went for 1.7, I believe. So it still wasn't cheap, right? But they got a pretty good deal on it. Um, I don't know what they made. I know that they had a house that they sold.
okay, so
So
that
they
might
might have
help.
had some equity to put down, but there's at least making probably around here, they're probably making at least six figures around here, something like, but you get two of them. And if they're, frugal, plus they
Yeah.
have a house to put down, some money to put down from another house. Yeah. Yeah. So,
So,
so anyway, yeah.
what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned in your 30 years of investing?
Oh no. Screen your tenants to um how shall I say it? Screen your tenants ferociously.
Did you
Ferocious.
have some
Just
tenant issues? Is that where this is coming from?
I had one. All you need is one. Pacific Heights. Did you ever hear of the movie Pacific Heights?
No.
Well, you're real estate investors. It's a classic movie with Michael Keaton. You need to watch it. There
Okay.
needs to be a popcorn night. Okay, you need to do this. It's very important. Pacific Heights was a very interesting story, and I basically had my own version of Pacific Heights. And so I had the tenant from hell, and it was an extraordinary story, and it forever changed the way I thought about. I mean, I've actually asked a potential tenant, to give me his police report. Always do background checks. I take it very, very seriously. It's because there are people out there who are professional tenants. They may know more about the law than you do as a landlord. And it literally, there are people that I know who have met multiples of what I have, who haven't had that bad tenant experience. So yeah, so I have great tenants now. I have very great tenants, and if they just breathe or look at me wrong, I don't accept them. So that's, I'd say, that was probably my number one lesson. My number two lesson is to be a very good underwriter with your money, because there are people out there. California is rife with scammers. There was a guy who just recently got some jail time. I'm happy to hear that. He was Flip It to Win It. He was a TV show host, and he was scamming people out of their money. And I have encountered several of these people in my REI meetups. I know so. I know I actually have a class on how to avoid scams, but there's so many of them. But it's important to be aware. Don't be lazy with your money. When you think about what happened with Bernie Madoff and the different people, a lot of people they trust. They don't do the trust but verify. They just trust. They write the check, and there's so many ways that can happen. I've seen it happen. People are the speakers, the teachers. They set up their group leaders with these REI meetup groups, or they're on TV, and people trust them because they keep seeing them everywhere, and they don't realize that they either are scammers, or they'll take advantage of people, or they'll be reckless or lazy with the other people's money. So being a really great underwriter, when we apply for a bank loan, the banks do not trust us at all, right? So I'm a mortgage broker, and I've processed over 500 loans, right? What do they want? They want to see your credit. If you've had one credit late, they want to know why. And you have to write up a letter explaining why,
Mhm.
right? If you have, they want to see your income. They call um, your HR department over and over again, making sure, do you still work there the day before the closing? Do you still work there? They have a ton of paperwork. You just keep giving them paperwork. Well, why? Because they're underwriting you. They're underwriting the house. They want to make sure that their money is returned to them. And with private money, people who invest, they're lazy. They just like, oh, that guy's got a good story. Here's a check. They hand it off, and then they get scammed. So being a really great underwriter, and basically these both lessons have to do with not trusting anything, and you can't in this industry. And nobody tells you that. It's like, oh, it's all, oh, you're going to make money doing, do this, do that. And it's always rosy. But it's not rosy. This is hard work, and your money does need to be protected. And if you're blessed to be a custodian of somebody else's money, you really need to work harder to protect that money.
Yeah, we were talking, I guess, before we went live about Nick and I were saying like, the money in real estate when everybody pitches, oh, it's passive income, and in most cases, it's not actually passive income unless you have a lot of money to dump into something that maybe is passive for you. But when you're building a real estate business or building a portfolio like Nick has and I have, you need to be actively working in that portfolio every single day to manage it, to grow it, to manage the rehabs, the turnovers, the evictions, whatever it is. That's not passive at all. So a lot of the people are out there talking about how passive it is. And maybe if you have 100 grand and you're an accredited investor, you want to put it into a fund, sure, that's passive. But buying and selling real estate is not a passive game at all.
Correct. That's right. Yeah. Well
And
said.
going back in the beginning of this episode, and it's something that I talk to people a lot about. You said about the two-prong theory and having a business, an active business that makes money. And Nick started with a landscaping company, and that's how he started buying real estate. And I started by buying, I had a job at one point, but I was building businesses around real estate. So I became a general contractor and home builder. I became a property manager for other investors. And when people say like, "Oh my God, you're making so much money in real estate," I'm like, my businesses make more money than the real
Mhm.
estate makes.
Yeah.
And if you have the money coming in from the business and you spend it on real estate, then you're really kind of get your cake and eat it too, or however you want to say that, right?
No, that's exactly right.
But for the people that are out there listening, saying like, I want to quit my job tomorrow and just invest in real estate, that's really, really, really hard to do. So, and you're going to be in like the 1% of real estate investors that can just quit their job with not a ton of money. It's different if you have a bunch of money, I think, in my opinion. But if you're just like starting out and you want to be a real estate investor, you need to like keep your job or increase your active income first, and then start investing in real estate and do it simultaneously. And that's really how you grow. It's not just quit your job and become a social media influencer and real estate investor. That's not how it works.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
So what in your bio here, it says how to compress time and retire in 3 years. When you say that, why aren't you retired? Because I know for me, can't imagine it's not about money. It's about what would you do if you would retire, right? For me, like it's like I think I would just kind of start dying at that point. Like
Right.
when you
Right.
say that, what do you mean by that?
Well, first of all, it can be done. And that's why I say it, because it can be done and it gets people to think like, oh, what does that mean? Right. So it can be done. Um, but I also always say, don't retire. There are better things to do. Right. So I always say that too. But I do want people to think of that because it's more about control. It's about having control of your life and having options. So I have a joke. I started off with in real estate back when I was mentioning in the 90s, and a really good friend of mine um, has been just a rock star in real estate. And he was one of my best friends back in the day. I started off in Boston area, and he's like, I'm going to retire when I'm 30. And then he was 30, and I'm like, hey, have you retired yet? Nah, I'm bored. I'm going to retire when I'm 45, right? And now he's in his 50s, and he's like, oh, I can't retire. I'm going to take the summer off though. So I texted him a couple weeks ago and I said, I'm going to call you, and if you're not hanging out at the beach or at the pool with your grandkids, then I'm gonna slap you, right? Because if you have another deal going on, but it's just the creative energy, the mind. We love to create, we love to learn and grow and test ourselves. But there are many people who don't love their jobs. And so for the people who don't love their jobs, and they want to own real estate and they want to retire in 3 years, it can be done. Because I do have friends who have done it. And I didn't even think of it as an option. I just thought of it as just, I just keep going and going and going. And then I had a few friends of mine who had no experience in real estate at all, coming to me for advice. And then within 3 years, they cashed out with multiple seven figures and they retired. Now, they took time off because, of course, the bug got them again. And now they're going, looking for another deal. But they took about 2.5 years off. And basically, when I say how to do this, it's really about specialized knowledge and using forced appreciation in a large scale. So if you can learn, when I say specialized, if you understand right now, there's a tremendous opportunity in the distress of the commercial assets right now. If you can learn, for example, how to invest in specific types of commercial properties very, very diligently, you can, because it's a larger scale, you can literally make enough money to retire in a couple of years. Because what you could do with the money after that is you can learn to become a really great underwriter and take the cash and start working with other developers who are more active and become that passive money. So let's say you just say you flip a multi-unit apartment building and you end up with $2 million. Right now, if you've been smart enough to be collaborating with other people who have other deals going on, and you know that they're really tight operators and they're very high integrity, and you get attorneys involved so that you're protected, and then you give a little bit to this operator, a couple 100,000, you get here. You can literally retire by just being a great underwriter and then investing that money and get other people who are having active businesses in real estate making the money for you. And then it's a win-win. You're basically doing what the banks have been doing for centuries. You become the bank, but you have to be a great underwriter like the banks are, or you're going to hurt yourself very, very much and you're going to lose your money.
So you mentioned that you were going to start selling some of your single family investment properties to start investing in multifamily. What
No,
is
she
it?
said commercial.
Or
So do you mean
do you mean
multifamily or do you mean true commercial, like
Commercial.
industrial
I've had,
office?
yeah, I've had multifamily. I am not opposed to multifamily, but right now my target is not multifamily.
so what
Yeah,
kind of
it's
commercial
commercial.
space are you going to be focusing on?
Shopping center, retail. Yeah, I have some friends who've done extremely well. They had no experience at all. And I was just with her the other day at her retail shopping center. It's doing extremely well. We took a tour of it, and I brought one of my contractors over there to give her a bid on some of the vacant space, and so yeah. So I figure for all of the time and money and headaches, if I can learn, this another level, I can trade up basically. But I'll be straight up with you, it's not for the faint of heart. If you're really great with math and negotiations and people and you get the right training, it's something that people should think about doing, but it's not for everybody. It's easier for someone to start off in the residential because it's something we can most of us can wrap our head around. Even if we have an apartment, we know what it's like to live in a house, but commercial is like a different animal altogether. It's been really, really excellent. I'm learning a lot and I'm hanging around with some incredible operators, learning a ton. And so I expect by the end of the year I'll have a retail shopping center of some sort.
And Is that something that you're going to be partnering up with other people? Because I know when a lot of people talk about the bigger multifamily deals, it's like so many different hands in the pot, and there's
The syndication,
yeah.
essentially. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, I'll be working with I have a syndication attorney as one of my best friends, so we'll be working that out. I also, as a mortgage broker and processing over 500 loans, I know which of my clients have money on the sidelines that they would like to invest if they knew where to invest them. And I have a list of people who said, "Hey, let me know when you have something." Right? So it's my job to make sure that the underwriting is really, really solid and that these people are going to have nice passive income, for years to come. That's my objective.
Awesome. Well, how can our listeners find you on social media, on YouTube? Where are you at so they can come find you?
The easiest way is my name is Ginger Crystal Faith, and I'm probably one of the only people with that name. So I'm all over social media, and I have a YouTube channel, and that would be the easiest way. I've got, two websites. One of them is womenswealthnetwork.net, and then of course one is for my brokerage. So that's the easiest way. Just find Ginger Crystal Faith and check me out. I'm all over the place. So
All right, Ginger Crystal Faith. That is a unique name. And I see your YouTube channel here is Loving Livermore and Tri Valley. Is that right?
yeah, I'm trying to change that handle, but that's not easy to do.
Yeah,
So
it's a long one. It's a long one. I was like,
yeah.
sound silly
But
reading
you
it.
could probably, I think you could probably just say, YouTube, Ginger Crystal Faith, San Francisco. Or something. I
Okay,
have to try. I have to go check that out, see if I can find myself
awesome.
um, incognito.
Well, Ginger, we appreciate your time and insight on the California market. It's always interesting for us down here where our price points are your down payments. So it's, definitely interesting always to hear from the other side of the country. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for
Thank
very
you.
much for your time as well. It's been an absolute pleasure, gentlemen.
All right, Ginger, if we don't see you soon, we'll see you on YouTube and our followers follow Ginger Crystal Faith on all the socials. We'll see you next time.